Hello, I'm Sally Spencer Thomas, CEO and co-founder of the Carson J. Spencer Foundation.
Hi, I'm Jarrod, Hindman, the Violence and Suicide Prevention Section Manager at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment.
As a psychologist and a suicide prevention specialist, I have a strong professional interest in the work of man therapy. I also have a personal interest. I lost my younger brother to suicide in 2004, and he was 34 years old at the time, an entrepreneur here in Denver who happened to live with a mental health condition, namely bipolar disorder. And, in the last few weeks of his life, as it was becoming very clear to the family that he was incredibly distressed, we were scrambling for resources. And, in the end, I think largely it was the stigma that killed him more than the illness itself. We had access to resources, all of that. He just didn't have a role model that showed him that as a man going through tough times, it's courageous to reach out and, get support in a way that gets your life back on track. He didn't have a role model for that, and he didn't kind of have a masculine way to do that. The resources that we were offering back in 2004 were pretty limited and didn't really fit kind of how he saw himself. So I think, working with Office of Suicide Prevention and CACTUS, it's been a tremendous journey to learn that Carson wasn't alone. There's a lot of men out there who are suffering in silence, who are waiting until things are absolutely catastrophic, both in their health and in their life circumstances before they reach out and take action. There's just so much unnecessary suffering that our partnership really looked to fill that gap and to reach men sooner in ways that made sense to them and in ways that were actionable. And so I'm a huge fan of the Man Therapy Project. I think it does a number of things really, really well. First of all, the tone of the program is unlike any other that we've seen ever. I think it was an incredibly bold move to use humor around something that people are feeling is so taboo and so untouchable. But humor is absolutely the secret ingredient that makes this work. It brings down the social barriers that make it much more accessible, and people pass it along to their peers just because it's funny, whereas most mental health campaigns are so sterile that it's just painful to read them, let alone get the information you need out of them. So the humor piece is critical. I think the other parts of the man therapy work that are filling the gap is that the assessment tool, the 18-point head inspection, does a great job of quickly sorting out for guys, how bad is it? How bad is my depression, anxiety, anger, and substance abuse? And based on kind of that first pass, what should I do? I think that was when we did our research and development work, that was strong feedback that our guys told us was, give me a chance to fix it myself. Just give me an opportunity to put some tools into place and some benchmarks so I know, when am I in over my head? When do I need professional help, or when do I need crisis help? And I think that's the brilliance of that 18-point head inspection. Within 5 minutes, a guy gets an answer around that. You know what? You're doing pretty well. Keep it up. Here's some self-help stuff. You know what? You could use a little support now. Here's some peer help stuff. You know what? There's some troubling areas here that are worrisome. Here's some professional resources for you. Or, you know what? Don't pass go. Go right to a crisis line and give them a call because, you're in some danger right now. So I think all of those are really good aspects of the man therapy program, and then we're building up a library right now of real men who have lived through this, who have stories to share, not only of what the despair feels like and how people find themselves there, the many pathways that people's life and mental health conditions can take really dark turns, but more importantly, how they get out of it. And again, many pathways that men get out. Whether it's professional help or medication or peer support or even just kind of doing an overall health revamp or spiritual path, all of these are viable options for men. And they can hear stories of men that kind of look like them, kind of sound like them, kind of have similar life challenges, it can give a lot of hope.
It's really a tripod of agencies keeping this up and running. So my office, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, and the Office of Suicide Prevention represents the public side. Sally's organization, the Carson J. Spencer Foundation, is the nonprofit partner, and CACTUS is the private partner, who is the marketing agency, the advertising agency that developed all the creative. And the partnership really for Sally and I is bringing the concept or the expertise and the background information to the table. And we've been doing it since day one. Essentially, we all got together very, very quickly after some very initial conversations about the need to do better outreach and to provide better services to working age men who carry the burden of suicide in Colorado and nationally. As far as when we talk about suicide deaths, men of a working age really carry the burden. And we had historically done very little to reach this demographic. And so what Sally and I really do from a nonprofit and a public perspective is bring that suicide prevention expertise to the table, which has been invaluable. And, not just Sally and I and our two organizations, but we also brought together a group of national advisors who are nationally and internationally known in the suicide prevention and the behavioral health communities. And so having that expertise and leadership at the table from the get-go has been one of the reasons, in my opinion, why we've had so much success with Man Therapy.
So, can I just add something there? So this process of partnering has been really the foundation of this program. And one of the things that I have learned over the last many years that we've been working together is that, mental health and suicide prevention in particular, we have a branding problem. We've just got a huge barrier as we're trying to message to the masses is that, people see us as dark, mysterious kind of conversation. It's scary, it's daunting. And so what I've learned is when you partner with a group like CACTUS, who really understands how messaging can get through all of the distractions and be compelling and be inspirational and be engaging, it's just taken this in a whole nother level. Like, we're now able to, engage groups like BuzzFeed and, different large organizations because they're attracted to the production, the quality of the marketing and the messaging aspect of this work. And when you have that, you are now able to reach so many more people because the messaging is so well crafted. And so that's been a big lesson for us. I mean, most mental health organizations, they've got, one part-time intern cranking out their messaging. And, and the thought is, well, if we just get the content out there, people will, appreciate it. And that's just really not how messaging works in this day and age.
On that note, I want to just kind of go through, and I don't have this laid out as strategically and expertly as I would like. So what I'm going to end up doing, I'm just going to be clicking on the website, and we're going to listen to Rich Mahogany do his spiel, and then we're going to talk about and have you all just comment on what we're hearing, why we're hearing it, why it's there, and why he's saying what he's saying. Okay? Let's see here.
Great.
All right.
Did you know that men have feelings too? No, not just the hippies. All of us. Hello, I'm Dr. Rich Mahogany. Welcome to Man Therapy. Go ahead. This is your time. Click one of the buttons above to continue. Are there buttons? They said there were going to be buttons.
I love that part. That's our introduction to Rich Mahogany, and I'm still on the site, so we may hear him chime in, and that's one of the things. So let's just start there. It's sort of an active site. Their clips are almost like movie clips. It's a really great, and anybody who's listening to this needs to go to the website, mantherapy.org. It's phenomenal. I fell in love with it. He sits there, but it doesn't just go static. I mean, it continues this sort of background. He's shifting around in his chair. He comments if the site is up too long and you haven't clicked on anything. He gives you this, prompt like, let's go. Let's do this. Talk to me about just the opening and the greeting.
Go ahead, Jarrod.
So, Sally, I'll definitely let you describe some of the background research you did with the focus groups and the in-depth interviews, which we might have talked a little bit the last time we connected, James. But I think that's one of 3 video introductions that Dr. Mahogany gives, depending on when and where you click on the site. We just wanted to have some variety for return visitors, but those introduction videos really illustrate the crux of the approach that we decided to take. And we decided to take that approach through doing some pretty in-depth research and looking at other public health or advertising campaigns that are specifically targeted to men. We know that the research tells us that men are resistant to asking for help, and that men don't access traditional mental health services anywhere near the rate that women do. Now, obviously, there are men out there who have and have for a long time access traditional mental health services, but we built this site designed for those guys that may be struggling with some type of emotional and behavioral health issue. But
and let me just pause you right there, because right now, if you click on this site, you hear that intro, and I'm letting it play, and that clicking you hear, that noise in the background, he's filleting a fish. Okay, he pulls up a cooler and he pulls out a fish. He pulls out a fillet knife and he actually fillets it while he's waiting on you to do something.
Super intentional. I think, first of all, it's really supposed to disarm somebody. People come to what they think is a mental health site with a certain set of expectations, and right off the bat, you're dealing with something different. Like, this is just not how that experience usually goes. Is that, first of all, someone's talking to you and they're trying to engage you, and then they're funny. All of the pieces, all of the videos of where he's sitting there and his eyes are blinking and he's filleting a fish or he's cleaning up his office. For me, that message is like, you know what? I'm still here. I'm the hardest working therapist out there, 24/7, 365 days. I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere. So, you might go off and get distracted from some other things, but I'm going to let you know every once in a while. You can come back and I'll give you some more help or some more information. We hear feedback, especially about the filleting the fish, all the time about, that was so cool. I went off to look at my email and I hear this noise in the background and, he's cleaning his office. It's hilarious. Yeah,
and I think that's the whole point is how do we disarm men or put them at ease so that they're willing to engage in the website, and that's the role of Dr. Mahogany. So every piece of his presence in the website is to give a little bit of information, but also to put men at ease and to make them feel comfortable to stick around and to explore the site. And our analytics tell us that that's exactly what's happening. I mean, we've had over 500,000 visitors now to the site, and our average time of visit continues to be over 5 minutes, which for the industry is just remarkable. And so we've done something right to engage men, to invite them in, and to keep them at the site so they actually spend some time either taking the 18-point head inspection or exploring the resources that are available in a really thorough way, which is fantastic for us.
And we're going to play some more of Rich Mahogany in a moment. I'm just going to click around the site and listen to some of the introductory videos. And as you said, Jarrod, there's a variety. It's not always the same if you click on a particular area, which is really cool, really entertaining and engaging. But let's just set the record straight. Rich Mahogany is not an actual therapist.
That is correct.
Right?
He is an actor. So he is, and he makes it pretty clear through a couple of the videos. He'll say things like, "Take it from me, I'm not even a real therapist." And so that he's merely a guide designed to walk men and people who care about men through the site.
Why does that work, Sally?
Even with all that disclaimer, though, we'll still get emails like, "What are your credentials?
Who
are you?"
Really?
Or can Rich Mahogany show up at this news media
I'm going
thing
to play
this
some
event that we have?
soothing noises while you ponder
He's talking
your next
again.
move.
Oh, he's listening to chainsaw music.
Yeah, he's gonna. He's holding up an old-style cassette recorder, and there's this chainsaw playing in the background on this cassette recording, supposedly. Chainsaw music, Jarrod, is that what that's called?
That's what I call it anyway.
That's amazing. Let's go ahead and click through. And I'm going to click on the link to the left. There's arrows on the left or right. Man therapies. Let's listen to this part.
Did you know that unchecked issues like anger, sadness, squiggly smile, Squigglies. What the f*** is this?
Stress.
Oh, that's supposed to be stress. Stress, or even substance abuse, can lead to dangerous mental illness and even suicidal thoughts. It's true. Hello, I'm Dr. Rich Mahogany. Welcome to Man Therapy. You're the captain of this vessel, so click one of the options above to begin your voyage. What are you doing with my chart?
All right, Sally, go ahead.
As I was listening to those pieces from the website, it's clear that a lot of the humor actually comes through from visual pieces of the experience, and that in addition to those videos, we also have a couple of radio spots that we recorded this fall that also might be really beneficial for your listeners to hear.
Talk to me about what we heard just a moment ago about he goes off into talking about, stress and, stuff that's bothering you. And then he says squiggly line. He's got this flip chart in front of him. And, it's a complete sight gag, but at the same time, it's disruptive of what you expect, I suppose. Is that the idea behind it?
Yeah. One of the things that our research and development told us was that a lot of the men that we're trying to reach, we call them double jeopardy men with a number of risk factors who are also least likely to seek care on their own. They don't necessarily see their problems through a mental health framework. So they're not necessarily seeing themselves as depressed or anxious or whatever. What they often report is that they have a very stressful life. So there's things outside of them that are causing them distress or despair, relationships, family, jobs, etc., and that what they're mostly experiencing is stress. And so what we're trying to do with the website is actually to help them connect the dots and transition some of those experiences to acknowledge that there might be some more significant things going on there than just stress, and that there's certain benchmarks where they can again reach out for different types of resources. So that gag where he's starting to talk about are you experiencing these different things is a first attempt at that. Because I think most people can acknowledge, they have a certain level of stress in their lives, and sometimes it gets worse. And when it gets worse to a certain point, then other things start falling apart, and that's where they're trying to make that bridge.
Talk to me about that.
I would just add that traditionally, I think men hear the word depression or mental health, and they don't connect that things like stress and anxiety fit within that. And so, say, I think you're depressed. Men are like, I'm not depressed. That's not a manly thing. But if you talk about anger and anxiety and stress, then men can resonate with that a little bit. And so, like Sally said, it's really about connecting the dots.
Talk to me about that term that you use, Sally, and Jarrod obviously chime in on that as well. Double jeopardy men. Expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, so obviously this website isn't for all men. Whenever you try to create something for all people, you absolutely reach no one. We were very intentional to reach a certain subpopulation of men that we know is highest risk for suicide death. And that's men with multiple risk factors, so things like substance abuse, a strong sense of masculinity, people who are, very self-reliant and independent, people who, don't want to be the weak link in their team or, have that identity of being ill or broken. That kind of man. Multiple risk factors, and also least likely to seek help on their own. So they're not seeking preventative care really in any area of their life, and certainly not this, because of all of the social conditioning they've gotten about what that would mean for them. So it's a subcategory of men that we find that this is really resonating with, because it helps them think about their mental health in a different way and makes it manly to be courageous and take action before things become catastrophic.
And that whole manly macho thing, is it useful to think about or try to understand where that comes from in the effort to get men to be more proactive about engaging in either maintenance or intervention if they're having issues that are going unchecked?
Well, I'll certainly chime in because it's one of my favorite parts about the background and history of this project is it's I don't think we can do this work without thinking about how we as a society have defined what manliness means, what masculinity is. And so one of the things we talk about, or that resonates with me when we present this topic, is we say we made the deliberate decision, as we say it, to fish where the fish are. So we want to meet men where they're at. And to do that, we have to engage men who really embrace these traditional definitions of what masculinity means. We need to meet them where they're at to be able to engage with them, and so that's why that's such an important approach from my perspective. I mean, there's a lot of relevance, and it's important work to also change our definitions of what masculinity means, but all we're simply trying to do is say, yes, you embrace what traditional masculinity, how it's defined. We're simply trying to just add a little tweak to that definition to say, in order to be that man, in order to represent yourself under those definitions, you can't do that unless you're whole, unless you have strong wellness all the way around, including mental wellness. And so I think that's, for me, it really resonates at that level.
And I'll just add that, yes, the three partners were absolutely steadfast in that decision. And we've gotten some pushback, and we knew we were going to get pushback because we're taking a bold approach. So we've not wavered. But, not all mental health professionals, not all people who have been in the mental health work for a while, whether they're consumers or providers, get what we're trying to do. And so about 7% on our survey said that they were offended or upset by this for some reason. And when we look at their answers, it's pretty clear to us that either they're in the field or like they've done a significant amount of work in their own life to come through a hard time or to change their ideas about masculinity, and they feel like some of the tone of kind of talking about some of those stereotypes brings us back a little bit. And our response to them is, this isn't for you. You're already down the path in appreciating all of this, all of these issues. This is for the man who is, challenged in some way by a mental health condition or life circumstance and is kind of overwhelmed by that, where they can go in and they can see themselves and they can hear a tone that kind of reminds them of where they are, and like Jarrod said, then moves them to that next step. So we're okay with people. Again, it's not for everybody.
It's a small
person
percentage.
That makes them, the person that makes the mental health resource that everybody loves, I would like to shake their hand because it's pretty impossible, I think.
Yeah.
But that actually makes a change, But when you're really focused on a target demographic that you kind of know what they're thinking, what they're needing, what they're looking for, and then you can respond to that and watch them move, that's what we're trying to do. That's where we're at.
And Sally, let me continue with you on that on a related topic of the question that I asked Jarrod about whether or not it's useful to think about how we got here as a society and how men see themselves. What about how women see men? How does that dynamic affect the women who, were raised in the same society and may hold a lot of those same ideas about what men are supposed to be?
What we do know is that when a man does go engage in any kind of helping services, most often the primary thing that got them there was the encouragement of a primary partner, most often a wife or a girlfriend. So that women play a critical role in the chain of survival for men because in general women aren't as conditioned to always be pull yourself up by your bootstraps and don't show weakness and all that. Less so. It's changing every day. But less so, it's not a big a deal for us to go seek, all kinds of preventative care early, just as a matter of course of our lives. The mammograms and the blood pressure and all of that stuff. We just kind of schedule it in and do it because that's what you need to do to stay healthy, and it's not a big deal. I think for men it can be a little bit more of a difficulty to do the preventative work, and then certainly when there are symptoms emerging that need attention, there's more of an internal conflict of what does this mean to me as a man to not be well.
And Jarrod, that reminds me of the graphic in one of the PowerPoint presentations that I found on the web that you did, and it shows the set of dials, sort of this front of like an old, I don't know, some piece of electronics, and it's got men and it's got women. The man has one switch on and off, and the women, there's about 20 dials. Is that what we're talking about? Women, at least certainly perhaps even see themselves, as Sally pointed out, there's a lot more going on and they just attend to it. Guys, we don't see ourselves that way. Or did I miss the point about that graphic?
No, you got the point. That's from one of our national advisors, Dr. Paul Quinnett, who is an evolutionary psychologist, and so he uses that slide from time to time just to illustrate the differences, again, speaking in these broad generic terms of between men and women, that men can often be, have a one-track mind, and very few things kind of play into decision-making and how we operate. So it's a humorous way to illustrate that men and women may be different in how they approach the world, and that you can't just have the same approach to reach both sexes.
Go ahead, Sally.
The other piece that came out in the help-seeking literature that I think is relevant here is that for women, generally speaking, again, not all women, but for many women, when we go seek help, that's it. There's no debt to pay. We receive help, we accept it, we can move on. For many men, because of some power dynamics, sometimes being in debt for getting help needs to be repaid. Men get help from each other all the time. Let me help you move, I'll help you clean out your gutters, I'll help you fix your toilet, back and forth we go. But the debt of asking for help gets repaid in some way. When we're talking about mental health services, there's a number of reasons why, you cannot clean out your therapist's gutters or help them move. It's just one of those ethical, professional boundaries that can't be violated. And this is one of the reasons why it's the predominance of people who go to mental health counseling are women. I don't know what the numbers are currently, but it's far over 50% of people who show up in mental health services are women. For female, and so that's an obstacle, and it's also one of the reasons when you look at the 12-step programs where you see a much greater gender balance is because men can go in there and say, right now I'm needing support, and I'm willing to receive your support, but I can see down the way when I'm sober, when I'm in recovery, I can pay that back. I can be somebody else's sponsor or mentor or whatever, and I can help bring the next person along, and I can make meaning out of my struggle by paying it back to the next generation or whatever. So we need to find ways to help men have what we call reciprocity in the help-seeking process so that they can, receive support or help or take action, but then down the way they can repay that in some way. And there's a number of really cool models that are emerging right now that are really exciting. One of them is actually called Project Helping, and I'm a big fan, where people who have various different types of mental health conditions, whether it be bipolar or depression or anxiety or whatever, they engage in volunteering in their community, and they do it together. So, and again, 50-50 gender balance are showing up for this work. But it's that sense of, community, we're doing this together, and, we're helping others, and that makes us feel good. So in any place that we can find opportunities for men to make meaning out of their challenges, when they've got their feet under them, it helps people stay in the healing process. It helps them make sense out of their struggle, so it wasn't just, this thing that blindsided them in their life. It's actually something that can make them stronger. All of those opportunities, I think, are another place we need to focus on as we're trying to sort out what's going to help men.
All right. I want to move on to some of the testimonials that are on the site. This is Tony.
My mom was Native American, full-blooded, and she was mean. I took severe beatings from her, and my dad was just like a person who was there who wasn't there. Kids are impressionable, and the only impression I got is I wasn't wanted, even at a young age, is I don't fit in, I don't belong here. Not even in the military, where you're supposed to feel like, at teamwork and everything else. And I played on basketball teams, football teams, and I was an athlete in school and everything else. But I never felt that part of wanting to be a part of. And it was lonely life. It was a very lonely life.
Now, Tony goes on to talk about his struggle, his attempt to take his own life. It's a very compelling story. One of the cool things graphically is the way it is shot is also very compelling. Is when Tony starts talking, you got a close-up, full frame shot of his face. And then you pull back and you realize that he's in a wheelchair. And that visual alone, and in conjunction with him telling his story, I mean, it's heart-wrenching. It's really, really compelling. Your thoughts?
The one thing I remember about Tony, and Sally, correct me if I'm wrong, but Tony kind of found us and we found him at a community presentation about man therapy in Pueblo, Colorado. And Sally and I went down there to do what we call these little town hall meetings, to go introduce people to the site and get people bought in and to engage the community in man therapy. And Tony happened to be at that presentation and, clearly spoke to him, and he connected with Sally and I after that, and was gracious enough to tell his story. And to me, that's the real power of this site. We've got this guy who didn't know anything about man therapy and showed up and was compelled enough and moved enough to tell his story on film, which is it's a really awesome story from my perspective.
Yeah, I just was so thrilled that Tony was agreeable to work with us. His story is completely compelling. If you put yourself in his place, he had significant loss, significant hardship, just facing all kinds of obstacles. And when you get far enough in the video, he talks about how, he showed up at this motel to take his life. And there was something about how he did that, how he showed up in the lobby, that the attendant in the registration desk was like, there's something not right here. And it really was that person in the hotel that kind of started to take action that saved his life. And so not only do I love that story about Tony's resilience and recovery, from places that most people would think would be so hard to overcome. He's got a fully thriving life right now on every front. So not only his story, but also you never know. You could be someone in a grocery store and make a comment. You could be someone in a hotel lobby, let alone a close friend or family member. The things that you can say when you're reaching out when somebody is in that dark place matters tremendously. And so really one of our messages is, everybody plays a role in this work. Everybody can save a life.
He doesn't even know who the person was. And to this day, he doesn't know who this person was, but calls that person his angel, somebody who literally saved his life because they made that call and took the time to just go one step further to try to help this guy, somebody that they perceived to be in distress.
Total stranger.
Let's listen to Zach.
I played all sorts of sports when I was a kid, so I loved to bike, hike, run, play basketball, play football. My biggest hobby, though, honestly, is being a father to my two sons. I've got an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old sons, Alejandro and Santiago. And it all kind of came crashing down, and I had later what I figured out was a panic attack. And I've broken bones on a football field and torn ligaments on a basketball court, but none of that prepared me for that moment.
Now, Zach's story was particularly tough for me to listen to because that's a lot like my story. My own lived experience, my depression came as on the heels of divorce and job loss and all of that cocktail that a lot of guys go through. And he talks about his suicidal ideation, the idea that he thought about it, and that was a low point for him that compelled him to do something about it, and he reaches out.
Yeah, Zach's another great example of a guy whose story is so compelling, and he's made such a great contribution, not only in his life, but with his kids and his community. And what's one of the things I really enjoy about the testimonials, and we focused on them, is, tell the story of how guys got to where they were at, but really the message is about, here's what got me through, here's what helped get me out of that dark times and get me to a place where I'm now thriving. And what's great about it is the reasons are different. I mean, it depends on the guy and the story. And so one of the messages is, if guys spend some time or looking at those videos, is that there's a whole variety of things that got people through. It's not just going to see a mental health professional. It can be a whole variety of different things, from faith to a total stranger to friends and family, but there are a variety of different ways that guys can recover. And so that's one of the keys to the testimonials as well.
Yeah, Zach's one of our favorite spokespeople. He actually does quite a bit of interviewing on behalf of Man Therapy on a number of different venues. I mean, he's clearly got the man card in play. Football star, he's a rock star in the financial industry. He's tall and handsome and charismatic, and he's got all of that going on that kind of front, first pass impression piece. And then he talks very candidly about his despair, and also the fact that all of these resources were helpful. He persisted through family counseling, personal counseling, all this stuff. But when it comes down to it, what he says keeps him here and keeps him going are his core relationships with his kids and his father, and giving back, that reciprocity thing. He has started this group called Be Men, and again, it's about bringing men together to volunteer and help in the community, and what that does for men in terms of building a sense of connection and a sense of purpose in their life is so incredible. So he just brings forward the whole buffet of all the things that we're trying to promote for guys to choose from as they're trying to get their feet back on the ground.
And they're all incredibly compelling. And let's just listen to one last one. And this one is, again, something that you hear a lot. You hear a lot from people, both men and women, and that is the confluence and sometimes conflict between mental health and spirituality or traditional religion. This is Jeff's story.
I grew up in a faith tradition that oftentimes, if you couldn't see the wound or the injury, it had to be something spiritual or something, that you weren't praying enough or you weren't doing this or that enough, because the church on some level is a little afraid of mental illness. And so I was very quiet about it. I didn't even really tell my parents about it. I wasn't quite sure what was going on, other than I had these horrible bouts of darkness.
Jeff goes on to talk about what he did about that, how he addressed it. Again, a variety, constellation, if you will, of approaches. This also, Sally, is a common story of the kind of experiences and I guess mixed signals, mixed messages that we get from society and really people who care about us but don't know exactly how to help.
Yeah, I think in particular, faith communities can be incredibly places of healing, but they can also be places that can confuse people or even cause shame. And so we need to really work with faith communities, because there are a certain subgroup of people, no matter how loudly we are screaming from the top of the mountains, mental health services can help you, they're never going to go. There's just way too much conditioning behind that to prevent them from taking that step. But they might go see a rabbi, or they might go see a pastor, or some kind of spiritual leader or spiritual confidant. And so we want to make sure that there's that we're not working in silos. That our faith communities are kind of understanding their role in the faith search and the spiritual guidance and so forth, and also know when to cross-refer to mental health services, and vice versa, that the mental health professionals are also working collaboratively with faith communities to make sure that all systems around people who are struggling are kind of working in the same direction. And the faith community is just one part of our society that can help or hurt in those situations. Workplaces are another. How workplaces handle emotional crises matters tremendously. One of the biggest fallouts of someone who's gone through a suicide attempt or a suicide loss is job loss. And you start to think about the domino effect of all of these things, one after another. It just becomes incredibly hard to take oneself out. So Working with workplaces is another area where if we can get people to think proactively and help people screen for these things and get treatment earlier, if we can have workplaces be compassionate around this health condition and treat it like any other, like ask them, how do you treat when somebody has cancer? What are your policies and protocols? How can you adapt that if somebody's also living with depression? So we've got a lot of work to do. But what Man Therapy does is it opens doors. People want to know more. Like, what are you doing here? How does this work? We've actually been able to get the Man Therapy posters into some work sites as a way to start the conversation that wasn't happening before, particularly male-dominated workplaces.
Jarrod?
Yeah, I would just echo what Sally said, and I think what's exciting for me is that we're always looking for the next opportunity to enhance, expand, and improve Man Therapy. So we're going into a process right now to update the website, to put it on a newer platform, to make sure that we have even more resources and tools available on the site, that we have even more options of videos for people to engage in. And so this is, we've been tackling this project for 5 or 6 years now, but it's still really fresh, and we've barely scratched the surface. Even with over 500,000 visitors, most people haven't seen Man Therapy. So our job now is to get it in front of more people, because we think we know we have something that is effective for a really important segment of our population, and so it's this need now to keep it in front of people and to make sure that the resources are updated and accurate and relevant. And so we're going to be constantly doing that because we know how important this work is. And unfortunately, our numbers of suicide in Colorado and in the United States continue to tell us that we have to keep doing this work. And so Sally and myself and our friends at CACTUS are just going to keep plugging away, which for me is really exciting. And it's ongoing important work.
I also just wanted to add that in addition to the changes that Jarrod mentioned, we're also looking to make some very specific outreach tools and online resources for our male veterans and our male first responders. These have been two groups that have reached out to us and said, we want more of what you're doing. Can you address issues around trauma? Can you address issues around transition, specifically related to our work? And so we're working on that, and hopefully, in a few months we'll have some new things to show. At this point, what we've also learned about marketing and messaging is not only does it work, but it's also really expensive when you do it right. Television ads, radio ads, even print ads are costly, and so we're always looking for investors to help us move this along. We're always looking for new partners. This is obviously a free resource. Anybody can access it. So what we need to do is get the word out to people that this exists so that they know where to find it and how to best engage. So all kinds of partners, community partners, veteran resources, veterans associations, different types of men's groups. We're working really well now with a group of dads through Dad Summit 2.0, and daddy bloggers have gotten really excited about this. So there are a number of partnership opportunities that could also expand our reach exponentially, and we're looking for you.
I suspect that I will get emails, notes, comments that, okay, where's the female counterpart for mantherapy.org?
So my initial response is that when we get pushback, it means we're doing something right, because part of our goal is to just have people start having conversations about this topic. When we get asked, which we get asked often, including by some of our funders, is what about woman therapy? What about teen therapy? What about LGBTQ youth therapy? And it's a challenging conversation for us, and so I have two responses to that. The most simple one is we'll create woman therapy. I mean, the people at CACTUS are geniuses in what they do, and it's important work. There's lots of gaps in the suicide prevention and the mental health community that we can and should fill. What I go back to is the core idea of making sure that we are data-driven in the work that we do, and that we follow the research. And the data tell us that men still account for the vast majority of suicide deaths in our country. And we still know that men don't access traditional mental health services. So in my opinion, we have to continue our focus on working-age males in this work. And for me, that's what I always go back to when we have these conversations, is men need this service more than any other group at this point.
Sally?
We're laser focused. We're laser focused in the place that we feel like can make the most difference. And clearly other demographics would very much benefit from different resources and so forth. We know men outpace women for dying, but women outpace men for attempts, and could probably benefit from some other resources. Same with kids, same with LGBT people. We locked into a specific mission for the reasons that Jarrod has stated, and we're going to stay steadfast on that for a while until we start seeing some numbers moving. But we're always open, if there's funding and a will and interested partners to explore some of these, and we are. We're currently exploring some other partnerships and project ideas because the approach is so compelling that other people want to get involved. So we'll never say never, but for right now, we're pretty laser focused on reaching men.
Sally Spencer Thomas, Jarrod Hindman. You guys are great. Thank you so much.